the uniqueness about this, we never get to see and experience the same thing when we practice meditation. So sometimes people feel very comfortable right in the beginning, or sometimes people feel it in the middle, sometimes towards the end. That's how it is, which is okay, which is very natural. That's what it is. Yeah, so we can see that which simply means still this practice itself is not within our control, right? That's why we can experience it in different ways, but we can see when we get used to it little by little, we can see how controlled even one session, what we practice, how we handle these techniques even with our real control, real guide. So this is what we can see in time, when we get used to the techniques. So that's why we have to make this kind of practice also part of our everyday life, just like other things we do in our everyday life. So then we become the masters of our inner engineering, as Bhante mentioned, our inner experience. So that's what we need. It takes a while though. We have to be very patient. Most of the time, people get fed up right in the beginning. Since they don't feel comfortable, they don't know how to face these challenges even. Sometimes when they realize these techniques are not working for them, without being patient, without giving it some time, people just give up. That's not the way to learn. We have to be very patient. We need to give some time to practice these techniques. We have to be very compassionate, very gentle even within these techniques. And then we have to become very smart, very skillful to face some inner challenges, to face and overcome them. Somehow we have to do that on our own eventually. So somebody can guide you, but the real working has to come from you. So you never know until you practice it. What will come, what will happen. Not only about the challenges, even the beautiful things. You become very sensitive, very much aware of these simple little glimpse of beauties even within our inner experience. So we shouldn't forget that also. There are so many things that you can appreciate, you can enjoy as you get to learn about yourself, your body and mind, your feelings, your emotions, your memories, these feelings, and all these things. They all come in the right single experience. So when all these things are happening at the same time, people can get really overwhelmed by these things. So that even is a good experience. So in meditation practice, you should not fear that. You should not get afraid of that, because you are in the right situation to face that. When you have a proper guidance, when you know how to guide yourself even, these things cannot really bother you that much. So you are ready to take that challenge because you are mindfully observing them. That is the unique friend you have there. Because in our normal everyday life, what happens to us is that we don't have someone to observe. Yes.
So we have an observer, he wants to visit the place,
Okay.
he's not a good person. I also see your cell phones and everything went outside, so the door is not locked. Why don't you bring them here?
Mhm.
And
Can you bring my stuff too?
Yeah, bring them
Yeah,
here.
I can just come out.
So we are going to sit there.
You can sit on a cushion or chair. Very good. Hi.
You're welcome to come closer if you'd like.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
really easy on the knees.
Oh, yeah.
You can.
That's fine. Okay. Right. So, as I was telling you, we can embrace any of these experiences during the meditation. Even we should welcome them, without fearing, without objecting them, because we have the unique spiritual quality to face and handle them, which is the mindfulness, the mindful awareness we call, right? So that is what we are greatly missing in our everyday life, that there is no one to observe when things happen, no one to even make positive, constructive, correct decisions even, right? Because most of the time we are controlled by our emotions, our past memories, future worries, and all these things. So when you have mindfulness, when there's someone always there to watch what happens to you, that is the way to become the masters. That means when you have someone to watch, especially within yourself, these conditions can no longer distract you. They cannot really take the control. So most of the time, when there is an observer, so many different conditions control us, guide us. So they are just pulling ourselves apart from, towards so many directions. That's how we get distracted, disturbed. So you never know where you are going to end up. People end up in very complicated situations, like eventually the depression, anxieties, and all these things. So this is the eventual result. So that's why this kind of regular mindfulness practice is very healthy, very beneficial, very useful for us, for everybody. So meditation practice can be a unique experience. Therefore, it's all about learning new things, learning about yourself, learning about unknown. That is what I really enjoy with this practice. When I learn more about myself, how this body and mind work, how these past memories, thoughts, emotions influence my present moment, and when I mindfully observe them, how I can control myself, without being carried away by these conditions. So that's how I maintain my control. That's how I maintain my inner peace and tranquility within any situation, which is possible for anyone. If we know the proper technique, if we have this interest, these values, so we can do that. So this young age is a very good time to do that, because we have so much energy, right? We have so much energy, power, strength, so all these energies can be directed in the right way, right direction, which is very important for the time ahead. Because that type of mentality, that type of behavior, even character, when it becomes it influences everything in our life, right? Without any exception. So that's the way to be very successful in all aspects in life. Any other question?
I think we need to start opening this up to discussion.
Yes.
So let's have Lana, can you come closer? Because I can't even see you. I think it's more beneficial for us. Since this is a trial run of this day camp, I think we need to figure out what works for us as attendees. Okay, so
Yes.
this is an open space, right? There's things that we can talk about that goes through our mind, especially like us regionals. Like I talk about this stuff all the time, like when I'm here, But I don't want to be the only one bringing stuff up, so I can help facilitate right now. But then if you guys think of things, please bring it up. Okay, Norman? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So a recent experience that I have felt was Param Yandi passing away. It was really hard for me because I wasn't close to this lady, but the fact that I saw her talking to me and all happy, and then within a month I saw her body decay to nothing and just go on what was it called? When they have machines help you, like that. And she's hooked up to these machines. It just looked like she was a dead sack, just being pushed life into it. Like it just felt so surreal to me. And I'd like to think I'm pretty strong mentally, but right when I saw her, it broke me down. So I came up to Duncan Children and I was telling him I've been thinking a lot about death, and what death is, because death is not an easy concept. We all know it's inevitable. We all know it's going to happen to us. But yet, there's nights where I wake up and I think of my parents dying. I think about my friends dying. I think about me dying. So it's very hard to understand. So I think that's one thing that maybe you can bring up, maybe talk about a little bit about what death is and how did, how did Lord Buddha see death? And everyone knows, he said, it's inevitable, don't think about it. But how did he help people not think about it? So.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you brought that topic up. Actually, I think it's a very relevant topic. A common question that we all have. So therefore, it should be a topic actually in our life. For everybody, it's a very important thing to think about. But many people are confused. Many people have no understanding about it. Only thing many people have is the fear and anxiety about the death and dying. I recently actually conducted a series of meditation sessions on death and dying at a yoga center, Red Lotus Yoga Center in Rochester. That was very interesting, very enlightening actually for me and the participants. They were very excited about, when I started talking about it, along with the meditation practice as a guided meditation, along with the concept of death and dying. As Lord Chinana mentioned, even today I spoke about it, about the experience about Taranga and his dying. That's not only for you, even as monks, all our congregational members here, it was a real shock. She was very young, died from cancer. She suffered for about 8 months, so we all were there throughout the time. That was really unexpected, and somehow that was the reality. So we all shared that experience, but we never know what she really went through, right? Within her understanding, within her body and mind, the emotions, the struggling, and all these things, we have no clue, right? We don't see what exactly happens in a person in such a situation. But that experience itself actually gave a lot of people a lot of insight. They kind of opened up their hearts and minds. You know, I could see that some of the same age people became very different from that afterwards. You know, that gave a very deep, meaningful message. You know. So that was very positive in that way, you know. And the other good thing is that many people who were around her gave every possible support, assistance, you know, to handle that, to process that emotional experience, physical pain even, and everything. So there were a lot of caring, love, and all these compassion, positive things. So personally, the death and dying actually is one of my most interesting meditation and contemplation. That comes to my mind every day. Every single day, that is something I think about. It comes to my mind. That comes to my awareness. So the contemplation, mindful contemplation on death and dying actually is one of the most beautiful meditations in the Buddhist tradition, Buddhist understanding. This is spiritual path because of these very positive benefits. You know, positive benefits when you mindfully think about it, even when you meditate on that. So many beautiful things can happen to your life. You know?
So how do you guide yourself through the How do you contemplate through that?
Right, that's a good question. You know, how we think about it, right? How we meditate about death and dying. This is a question actually from even very young age. You know, without understanding much about this life. Sometimes kids ask that question, what is death? What happens to me? You know, they even think about what happens when my mom dies. You know, they get to know about these things and they ask that simple question too. But when we grow up, it's different. The way we feel, the way we think about it, you know, how this strong emotional part gets attached to it. You know, it's very difficult. Very disturbing. It can be really freaking out, you know, even to think about it, you know. Therefore, in this part of the world, we can see that it's a very dark area that you are not supposed to be talking about it, thinking about it, or being open to it, you know. It's always a full stop, right? We don't think beyond that. So we get to see so many people dying, you know. It's not a secret. We can see, we hear it every day. But when it comes to our close experience, which means when somebody closer to us experiences this death and dying, it can be really touching. It can be really frustrating experience for us. We feel it, right? So how to properly interact with that, you know, is something we need to learn. So the first thing would be actually to think about it mindfully. You know, as we all know about it, you know, there are so many things to learn about it though. You know, even though we superficially understand it, there are so many things to understand when you want to know what is death and dying. You know, people have so many questions around that, you know. what happens to me when I die, right? So as we can commonly see, there's a physical component to it, right? What happens to this physical body, physical experience? What happens to our mind? So what is going in our mind there? What is possible? And what happens to our emotions, and what happens to our relationships, family members, friends and others, and what happens to all our material things that we accumulated throughout the life, right? So people are struggling with all these things at death and dying, without exception, because all these things are involved there. And most interestingly, people have this interesting question to know that what happens afterwards. What happens after someone dies? What is the rebirth? Where and how it takes place? So these are very interesting questions, and people have no clue sometimes in some of the areas, So the first thing would be, to begin with, we need to start thinking about it, right? Thinking about it. What is this death and dying? Especially when it comes to us as our experience, as we hear, as we see, as we get to interact with this kind of, as Lojina mentioned, there are moments in our life. So we should not stop. This is where the Buddha also started his journey. Prince Siddhartha, right? We learned that Prince Siddhartha, when he was 29 years old, he happened to see these inevitable life experiences of getting old, getting sick, and dying. This death and dying, exactly. When he saw these experiences for the very first time in his life, as his father, King Suddhodana, had prevented all these painful experiences, negative experiences from his life, knowing that he would leave the palace in order to become a spiritual person, but somehow he was very unsuccessful. Prince Siddhartha happened to see these things when he was in the town. He saw them for the very first time, and there were so many questions in his head. He had never seen them before, so he asked his friend Chanda, who are these people? What's wrong with them? Why they look so sad? Why they are crying? What is this body? What they are carrying? Where they are taking it? So he came to know all these truth eventually, and that really opened up his mind. And that's where he began to think about the life. He thought eventually, when he came to know that this is the ultimate truth, ultimate experience that he was going to experience, he thought, wow, if this is the reality of my life, what's the point of living inside a palace? Knowing this is coming on my way, right? I should find a way out. I should try to find a solution for these problems. And that thinking, that investigation actually, that motivation actually gave us a Buddha. That thinking created a Buddha. That spiritual revolution happened in that young mind. So the first way to begin with is to mindfully, rationally think about it. Never forgetting about it, never stopping, never denying it. We need to think about it. What is it? And there are so many things actually can happen to you when you think about the death and dying. So it's so many ways actually you can experience it, understand it, meditate on that. So it can be really meditation. It can be a real meditation when you mindfully think about the death and dying. that itself becomes the meditation, and nothing else. You know, when you think about it, when you begin to deeply analyze it, you know, you begin to realize so many beautiful things about this life and the world as a common reality. That, as you said, it is inevitable that we all are going to die sooner or later. You never know when it's going to happen, right? So we are just enjoying and doing whatever we can, you know, going to college, working, earning money, having a family life, raising kids, you know, doing all these things, not knowing when and how it's going to happen. So, if you do not think about it, if you don't consider about that topic, you will experience it unexpectedly. That makes the real difficult experience for many people. You know, if you have not thought about it, it's going to be a real shock. It's going to be a big, huge surprise for you. You never expected that, right? So that's the first benefit that you are getting when you mindfully, rationally think about death and dying. It's not going to be a surprise for you. Why? You knew it. You thought about it, right? You were expecting that. So there's nothing to surprise. So when people face the death and dying unexpectedly as a surprise, they don't know how to process that. They don't know how to handle it, because the emotional experience that they're going through is very powerful, right? As they are losing everything there, right? They're going to lose everything. They have to leave everything behind, even this body, everything, every single thing that they accumulate in their life, you know, whatever you can think, possibly, you're going to leave everything behind. So that becomes the most frustrating thing for many people, because people take these things for granted in their life, right? As they enjoy so many different things in their life, they think, oh, this is all about life. So they don't feel that they are going to leave these things one day. So they get so much attached to them. Emotionally, they get attached to these conditions, within, without, every single condition, so that they fear of losing these things. You know, they cannot let go, right? They want to get hold onto these things very powerfully, but they can't. In front of their eyes, they're going to lose all these things. So that's the most frustrating part about death and dying, losing everything. And the other thing is that the fear of unknown, not knowing what's going to happen next. And for all of us, we all don't have that knowledge. Even though we have learned so many things from our religion, our education maybe, but we don't know exactly what will happen. So the fear of unknown is very powerful. That anxiety is so powerful, you know. So when you learn about death and dying, you simply become aware of these possible things. You know, you need to educate yourself in these things. So we know physically what happens to our body, right? So when our body, our physical organs can no longer function. And when our body starts to deteriorate, right, can no longer function, we cannot support this body anymore to continue, right? And when we become very old and very weak, without being able to stand up, walk, without being able to be in one position, so we become very helpless, right? if you are normally dying, right? The normal death. So physically, this body deteriorates, right? And as our body and mind are connected, if we have not trained our mind in any spiritual practice or cultivating any spiritual qualities, our mind is also going to be very weak, right? As they become very emotional, the proper mindfulness, wise thinking, all these things are not going to be there, right? So the mentally people can get really devastated there because of these negative emotions and the physical pain mostly, you know. So these things are going to happen. So as the death and dying is one of the most powerful experience in our life, as for everybody, in the Buddha's teachings, it's a very special topic. And Buddha wanted us to mindfully think about it before we get there. Before we get there, not to be surprised, not to get panic, not to get upset, not to get disturbed by these possible distractions, but to mindfully face it. You know, according to the teachings, it is said that if we face the death and dying with a disturbed mind, being very confused and unconscious, our rebirth is not going to be a pleasant one. Rebirth can be in a very painful, sorrowful situation. You know, therefore, in the teachings it is said that, but many people are dying unconsciously with all these negative conditions. So we can see that, which is very normal to happen, right? Many people don't think about it. They don't appreciate such a thinking, contemplation, right? So when they get there, it's not the time to learn about it. It's not the wise thing to wait to understand and experience it and understand the reality of death and dying there. The wise thing is to think about it before, when we are conscious, when we are alive, you know. That way we can get prepared, you know. So we can learn so many things about our life and the world whenever we think about the death and dying. Even though many people think it's negative, pessimistic to think about the death and dying, according to the spirituality, spiritual practice, according to the Buddha's teachings, that can be a very powerful, life-changing agent, condition in the positive and very constructive perspective. You know, that according to our knowledge of the Buddha's teachings, there's no such a thing actually. There's no any topic actually can be powerfully change one's life as the death and dying. You know, when you think about that topic, that reality, it can really change your life. It can really change your direction. You know, what you are appreciating in your life, what you enjoy in your life, the purpose of your life. Everything is going to get affected by that in a positive way, right? There's no harm at all when you think about the death and dying in any way. It can only change your life and turn it to a positive direction, beautiful direction. That's the beauty of it, as I see, you know. And according to my experience, my knowledge, my practice of meditation on death and dying actually, that is the most beautiful thing that you begin to enjoy in your life. When you learn about that ultimate inevitable reality, There are so many good things, positive qualities that you cultivated within your life. So as I always appreciate, as I always talk about it, what are the positive things that can happen to you? Do you have any idea when you think about death and dying?
More appreciate.
Ah,
Every day.
that's a
Grateful for your health. Yes.
what is it?
We're saying the same thing.
That's a huge thing actually, right? Appreciation. How is that happen? How can that happen?
You're not taking it for granted.
Yes.
What you have and
So-
who's around you.
Right. For understanding that actually, the interesting question I ask, what if you die today? What if you die today? What would you do? So if you get to know somehow, I want you to really think that today is your last day. Okay? There's no way to stop that. Today is going to be your last day. What would you be doing today? Think about it for a moment. Hmm?
Go home.
What is it?
Go home.
Okay.
Be satisfied with your life around you.
And what else?
Just talk to everyone again.
Be with family.
Yeah.
Be with your family.
Not go to work or school, just spend time with family and friends.
Okay.
And just do normal stuff.
Okay.
Eat all the food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Enjoy the food. What else? So you consciously come to know that today is your last day. Which can happen. Which is possible, right? One day you will get there, right? You may come to know that, right? What would be the most important thing for you if you simply ask that question? What do you think?
Be mentally prepared.
Hmm?
Be mentally prepared to go.
So much easier to
Go
say
without
than do it.
regret.
Yes, how? That's a good point actually. Be prepared to live, prepared to go, right? Yeah, that's a big question though. It's not a simple thing.
It's difficult to actually fathom.
Everything involves there, I think. Yeah, what else? What would be the most important thing for you?
Yeah, that's it. Just go home, talk to everyone.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Make peace with it.
Okay.
Yeah, peace.
Yeah.
Make sure you talk to your family about what happens after you pass away,
Hmm.
and make sure that they take care of themselves as well.
Right,
They don't
right.
just get too stressed out by the
Mm.
death and let it halt their lives.
Right.
I was completely different.
What was that?
I didn't think it would be, if I were to die today, I knew I was going to die. I don't know if it would be necessary to talk to my parents like her,
Hmm.
because the loss would be just as
Mm.
painful, no matter what.
Okay.
For me, I think of it as a way as I have a vision of what I want in 10 years from now. And if I knew I was going to die today, I just take that, I would still do what I needed to do to hit that goal of what I want to be 10 years from now. Because I think about death a lot. Like I do think when I'm lying in bed.
But when you have time to do that.
It does. Yeah, that's the thing. It didn't matter at that point. At that
But you
point, it's like I
mentioned-
am dying. And like,
So you mentioned about your goal, right?
yeah.
So would you be still struggling to achieve that goal?
At that point, it would be so surreal. I would just keep doing it because that's always what I wanted.
Do you think it would depend on what type of goal?
I think that's the thing. I don't think
Mm.
I really know what my goal is yet.
Mhm.
But whatever I thought it was, I would be doing it. That's,
Okay.
and I think that's what death really does. It
Mhm.
really makes you focus on what is it that you want. What is it
Right.
that truly means? What is it that's really special to you? And I'm not saying parents are not.
That's a serious question, right? That's why I ask people actually, even myself, what would be the most important thing for me as my life, in my life, you know.
Is
So
everyone
you can be wasting your whole life for something that you will leave one day, right? But it doesn't mean that all these things that you are doing is unimportant, right? But you should not take these things for granted, and you should not think these things to be the ultimate, because you are going to get frustrated otherwise, right? Because you are losing them. You have to leave them. So if you take only these things to be the most important thing in your life, that's what happens to many people. That they totally get frustrated, disappointed, fear, worries, and everything comes after that. You know, that's why I mentioned, you know, when you think about this inevitable ultimate reality of death and dying, gives you a proper perspective, you know, to sort out what would be the most important thing in your life, the meaningful thing in your life, and the purpose of your life eventually, you know. So, according to my long-term practice on this topic and meditation on death and dying, these beautiful things can happen to a person, you know. Whoever thinks, meditate, mindfully, rationally think about the death and dying, you know. When you come to know that this is your last day to live, as Asiri mentioned, the appreciation, the gratefulness is mostly acknowledged there, you know, because knowing that today is my last day, I have only few hours or very short time to live, you can become very sensitive to these things. Why? You know that it's only for few moments now. So you feel these relationships around you. You've never felt that way. You never felt these connections before. Death and dying is such a powerful, sensitive experience. It can make you really sensitive, that you can easily feel these things, right? Knowing that you are going to lose these things, these people, these beautiful people around you. So you feel these connections like never before. So such a deep appreciation can happen to such a person, you know, to appreciate these relationships, you know, how they support you, like your parents, your friends and others, you know, everything that supported you to come to this moment. So you feel so grateful, you know. So you don't feel that if you do not think about death and dying. That's why many people are ungrateful. They don't care. They don't respect others. They don't respect the nature. They don't appreciate these things because they are not sensitive to these things. That sensitivity can happen as a result of the deep meditation or rational thinking about death and dying. Very beautiful aspect to life, you know. And then the other important thing that, you know, knowing that you have only few moments to live, you don't want to waste your time. You don't want to abuse your time. You don't want to waste your important time, only few moments, you know. So then you want to spend that time very meaningfully, beneficially, right? As Noah mentioned, you know, getting prepared. You know, how I can get prepared for this? How can you and I settle some unsettled problems, maybe conflicts in my mind? You know, like forgiving someone, asking for forgiveness from someone. So people die with all these problems sometimes, unsettled conflicts inside. So that experience can be very powerfully frustrating there. So therefore, if you contemplate on death and dying mindfully as a meditation, you want to get yourself settled, right? So you find the importance of the remaining time that you don't want to waste it, right? You don't want to waste any single moment. So that urgency, that the using of your time, managing of your time meaningfully is a very important aspect of your life. That can happen as a result of the thinking of death and dying. Mm. And the other thing is that even physically, as somebody mentioned, that you will go home and eat. Right. So that's true, right? People want to enjoy it, But that also very important. As my experience, I think only when you think about death and dying, especially when you know today is your last day, how do you think you will feel the food?
It'd be the best thing I ever ate.
Huh?
It would be the best thing I ever ate.
Right? You feel the taste. You feel the taste very well. You never felt such a taste in your life. That's the sensitivity it can bring to you. You feel the food. You feel the taste. When you know that this would be my last meal to eat, right? You feel that taste, right? But other times, we don't feel it, even though we eat so many things, right? We don't really appreciate that. We don't really recognize the taste even. So can you see that? When you think about the death and dying, how conscious you become, how you become very alive, It can make you so conscious, so living. That's the uniqueness of it. You feel the taste when you eat, and not only the eating, everything that you are coming across is going to be very unique. You feel it in your body even, not only in your mind, your emotions. It can be a real experience for you, as that contemplation can make you very sensitive to these things, very powerful experience, What other things do you think can happen to a person like that? Mhm. And someone would do the most important thing, not unnecessary thing, the most valuable thing, the precious thing, as you mentioned, some of you, right? That you consider to be the most important thing in your life, right? So you make the right choices there, right? You don't have time to waste, right? On unnecessary, unmeaningful stuff. So you have to be very conscious about selecting these valuable duties, guiding yourself in these right directions. Mhm. So when you think about the death and dying this way, actually, how I explain that, actually, only then you are going to live your life. You see that? Even though we live without being conscious about these things, without any appreciation, without any gratefulness, it is just like dead. Isn't that what we call dead life? Right? If we are not sensitive to these things, even though we are alive in the superficial level, we are dead. So therefore, I say, from the moment you think about death and dying, from the moment you deeply feel this meaning of death and dying, and that's where you're going to begin to live. Exactly. Keep that in mind. It can be really awakening. It can bring you such a beautiful, wonderful experience into your life. So you can see the positive aspects of death and dying. And the other important thing is that, it can be a real technique to let go of many negativities in our life too, right? As I mentioned earlier, people are so much attached to these conditions in life. Relationships, money, cars, and all these things. For some people, this physical beauty, the appearance, the fit body, and all these things, nothing else. So they get obsessed by these things, right? Taking these things to be the ultimate in their life. So it can change your life, right? It can really change your life. Not to take these things for granted. It can really change your perspective. It doesn't mean that you should enjoy these things, appreciate these things, whatever you do. These things are needed for a healthy life, but we should know the ultimate result, our goal, So then we don't really interact with them blindly. This is what happens to many people, This is what we call the infatuation of the life itself, that many people are living like they are not going to die, right? Like they are going to be there forever, right? They don't appreciate others, they don't respect others, they don't respect themselves, all these negativities are there. So when you think that you are immortal, there's nothing you cannot do. You would do anything to be happy, That's very dangerous. That's very harmful and very unhealthy for people. So many people are acting like that. They are living like they are not going to die. They are going to be there forever. So we can see how people are talking, how people are behaving, interacting with world and others, But when you think about the life, that infatuation is a kind of drug, People are intoxicated by the life itself when they don't know the true meaning of life. That can lead towards the negativity, wrong life, wrong actions, negative karmas all the time, So therefore, life can be very different when you think about the death and dying, You begin to think about what is right and wrong, what is good and bad for you, positive and negative, helpful and not, wholesome and unwholesome, So that way you select your activities, your behavior in the right way, So people can control that, and people get really anxious, they get really tensed about life experience, getting too much worried about things. So that is also a result of not thinking about the death and dying. One day a psychologist came to me to learn about this death and dying in Buddhist practice, to know the meaning of it. She had no clue, So after a very meaningful discussion, what she told me that, oh Bhante, this would be a great medicine. This would be a great technique to let go of this tension and anxiety in life. That is true, definitely. When you think about the death and dying, you don't really worry unnecessarily. You don't really bother about things that much. It becomes very easy to let go of things when things happen. Not to really get upset about things. So what it would be when we have to leave everything behind, not only one simple thing. When you think about it more frequently, you train your mind to accept that inevitable realities in life. So that really can bring us the real harmony, that to know that we all are in that same experience. We all are here for a short time, you know. So then we learn how to live in harmony, help each other, you know, to love each other, you know, and appreciate. So all these positive things can happen to a person who thinks about the death and dying, you know. So the meditation on death and dying would be to mindfully, rationally, consciously think about it, you know, comparing it with our life. You know, in the Buddhist tradition, there's a meditation in the 4 foundations of mindfulness, Satara Satipatthana. In those days, especially the monks and nuns used to meditate in the forests, even in cemeteries, keeping a dead body in front of them, analyzing this body, what happens to it, how it decays, you know, comparing that experience with themselves. Oh, this would be the same experience for me, you know. So that way, having that real experience in front of them, they completely change their perspective to life, and that was a technique to even enlightenment eventually. So when it happens to us, why is it not happening to us? What's the difference? We don't think about it. We don't take it seriously. And it's happening all over the place, not only for us, right? The death and dying is a result of the impermanence, which is a unique nature, universal nature for everything, that everything comes to an end. So it is an inevitable reality for everything. So when someone contemplates on death and dying, this is how that knowledge, that understanding, deep realization can get broader, you know, that you see that it's not only me, not only you, everybody, and even everything, this material world, everything is decaying and dying eventually. So that person is realizing that it has a universal reality. And the other important aspect to it, you know, in the Buddhist teachings, when we talk about death and dying, there are several types of deaths. Do you know them? I remember seeing a documentary actually, thousands of ways to die. Like how people die in this world. But in the Dhamma, in the teachings, there are 3 types of deaths. The first one is the conventional death. Conventional death is what we see in this world, right? How people die, how animals die, right? By accidents or whatever the mean, they die. That's the end of their life, right? So we briefly mentioned what happens there. That's the dissolution of this body, the separation of the body and mind. That's the total end of this life, this process. And the karmic process also gets to an end there. So that's what we call the conventional death, right? So it is inevitable for everybody. That's one type of dying. The second death, very important, very interesting. It is called the constant death, or momentary death. What is that death? The constant death means, it's very interesting, very beautiful teaching actually. We are always dying. We are always being born and dying every single moment. In what levels? Even within our physical body, the cellular death, right? Even in this physical body, there's always 2 processes are taking place, building up and breaking down in the cellular levels, right? It's always taking place, even at this moment it's taking place. We cannot see it, but that is exactly what happens. to our body, right? So that is in the physical level, right? And what about the mind? Is it the same? What do you think? Your
It's
mind.
growing.
Huh?
It's always growing. It's always changing.
Yes, changing. Yeah. So we can see that even faster than the physical experience, the mind is going through that process. Every single moment it's changing. Changing means dying, decaying. So every single moment actually we are dying. We are being born, we are dying. Every single moment. So this is what we call the constant death. So that is realized only through the meditation, deep meditation experience. When we deeply concentrate our mind, focus our mind towards the samadhi, higher levels of the meditation practice, we begin to see this constant change in our body. So, if one directly, consciously experiences that constant death, do you think that conventional death would matter? What do you think? How it can be?
The
Because
other
we
deaths
are.
are more important.
Hmm?
I feel like the other deaths are more important because you're still living
Mm-hmm.
and you have a chance to change and
Okay.
you know.
What do you think? Yeah, that can be one perspective to it.
I feel like continuous death is hard to imagine, so
Yes.
it's hard to place importance on that.
Mhm.
A conventional death, we have so much experience with that.
Right.
It's easy to be overwhelmed with those feelings
Right,
when we
right,
see that
right,
happening for
right.
ourselves.
Yes. So we don't fear the constant death because we are ignorant to that. We don't see it, right? We don't get to experience it, but it is exactly what happens in reality. So if someone gets connected with that nature, the conventional death is nothing because it is also the same, So in that process, what happens is very unique. So in realizing that constant death without our control, we don't have no control over that. It's a universal nature, right? So when one completely acknowledges that, deeply understands it, how this process is taking place without our control, that is the way to let go of our self-identity, right? According to the teachings, we have a deep attachment to ourself as an illusion. So that's what you eventually let go when you know that constant death and die. So it is not different from the conventional death and the momentary death. So it's a matter of getting into a deeper level in this meditation practice. Okay. So the conventional death and the constant death and the ultimate death. What is the ultimate death? Ultimate death is the death of an enlightened being. Enlightened person means that person is not born again. Do you know that? In Buddhism, in the Buddhist teachings, we learn that an enlightened person is not going to be born again. That's the end of their journey in the spiritual practice. If you are born again, only then the whole mass of suffering is unfolding. Right? So that will be the ultimate death. That no more deaths for that person. Okay. So these are the three deaths explained in the Dhamma, in the teachings. Okay. So somehow to be very practical, to bring it to our everyday experience, it's very important that we mindfully, consciously think about it. It can really motivate you. It can never discourage you. It can never weaken you. You know, it can only make you very motivated and active, very constructive. You know, it can really give you the best choice for this life, for this day even, for this very moment when you learn about it. You know, so therefore, even to talk about death and dying is very meaningful, very important. It can really change your life in the right direction. So never fear, never be afraid of talking about death and dying, even thinking about it, you know. So you will learn so many beautiful things when you think about it. Any question? So many people ask that question, you know, especially young people. So what's the point of doing all these things then? Right? Working so hard, going to college, you know, earning money, and doing all these things, working maybe long hours, you know. Why do you take it so serious? If we are dying one day, if this is the ultimate thing that's going to happen, why we bother? Can we think that way? No. We cannot think like that, right? We have to live first. We have to support ourselves. This is only an internal awakening. This is for our understanding, spiritual awakening, right? Otherwise, we cannot really change what happens in our life, in the world. We cannot simply change that. But only thing we can change our perspective, our understanding, how we react to these things, right? What we appreciate and enjoy. All these things can be changed, you know. So therefore, it is not the right thing to be lazy and not do anything as a result of thinking about death and dying. That's a wrong practice, you know. It should really motivate you. It really can guide you in the right direction, you know. Any other question? There are so many things to talk about it, you know. So we didn't really touch about what happens after death, right? It should be another totally different topic for one day. But this for here and now, for this life, how it can be very beneficial. Any questions? Okay. If you do not have any questions, right? That will be all for today.
Okay.
All right. All right. Thank you very much.